What is up, guys? Welcome back to CageChat MMA. We are here for the UFC Vegas 42 preview. Of course, we've got Max Holloway versus Yair Rodriguez in the featherweight division. An absolute stellar main event. The card itself isn't great top to bottom. It's got some good matchups on there. It's got some fun fights, but it's really the pinnacle at the card is the main event. We've got Max Holloway, of course, former featherweight champion, coming off that devastating victory, the domination that he put on against Calvin Kattar at the start of the year. Many people thought he would, go on to fight for the title. He probably would have done had, Volkanovski versus Ortega not been pushed back until September. Of course, that fight was meant to happen in March, and in normal circumstances, had Volkanovski not caught COVID, we probably would have seen a quicker turnaround and probably would have seen Max versus Volkanovski free in September. But of course, Max wants to stay active. He's an absolute stud, and I have to appreciate the fact that he's going through this period of not really giving a fuck, and he's done two sort of back to back, fight nights where this is a guy who's a legitimate pay per view seller. You know, he's been there and done everything, and he's still only 29 years of age. He's got 5 title wins, as he said. He could have probably had one more on a different judge's scorecards in that split decision against Volkanovski at UFC 251. But, he's been phenomenal. Yes, he's got 3 losses and 3 wins in his last 6, but one was obviously the fight against Dustin Poirier in the interim title bout. And, of course, the last 2 were, very close decisions against Alex Volkanovski, and many people still believe that he won one, if not both of those. But then he came back with a vengeance against Calvin Kattar, battered him to the point where it probably should have been stopped, but Calvin Kattar showed how tough and strong he was. If you remember, that's where I'm the best boxer in the UFC came from, and he had the slipping of the 5 punches while he was talking to the announce team, and in particular DC. Obviously, prior to that, he'd fought both Frankie Edgar and Brian Ortega in the featherweight division. Those were his last 2 title wins, of course. He put a beating on Brian Ortega and came to a unanimous decision with Frankie Edgar, who obviously since then has moved down to bantamweight. But he's an absolute bona fide legend. He's a Hall of Famer confirmed, and he's still probably got 5-6 years at the top of the game, really. Albeit, he's got a lot of miles on the clock. He's got a few wars on the clock. The Ricardo Lamas standing in the middle of the octagon probably took a couple years of his career, as did the war with Poirier. I would say the war with Calvin Kattar, but it's more of a one-sided war. Definitely the battles with Volkanovski, that probably would have taken a couple years of this career as well. But he's beaten the lightweight champion, and that's interesting that he's talking about Charles Oliveira at this point in time. He's probably looking at that thinking, maybe if Charles Oliveira beats Dustin Poirier, I can sneak in there somewhere. Obviously many think Justin Gaethje should have that fight, and rightfully so. There's many people thinking that Islam Makhachev should take that opportunity also to fight the winner. But Max Holloway, if he comes out victorious tonight, and let's say he gets a Beneil Dariush, or he gets a Tony Ferguson at 155, or Conor McGregor, we did a rematch at 155, and he wins that fight, he's certainly next in line for a lightweight fight. And of course, we've seen him have trouble with cutting weight to 145, particularly on short notice. Maybe he's thinking, I'm coming into my 30s now, maybe I should move up to 155 and have that weight cut a bit more safer, and not have to, drain those extra 10 pounds out of him. But he is in 145 tonight, of course, and up against Yair Rodriguez, who's a very dynamic fighter. Again, he's got his highlight reels the same way Max Holloway does. He's a very unique fighter. If you remember the upwards elbow that knocked out the Korean Zombie in the final second of round 5 in a fight that Yair Rodriguez was losing. If you remember the no contest with Jeremy Stephens, obviously he suffered the eye poke, which meant he couldn't continue. And if you remember, Mexico went crazy, throwing everything inside the octagon, where you had Brendan Fitzgerald hiding under the announce table, and Michael Bisping, just having a laugh with the crowd and taking it all and getting free beer by the sounds of it. And then, of course, he put an absolute dominant display on against Jeremy Stephens. But again, he's got a win over BJ Penn, Alex Caceres, Andre Thiele. He's got a win over Dan Hooker, Charles Rosa. So he's equally had an equally fun rise to the top, and he's coming into this with what seems to be, at least on his own image, little pressure. He's coming into this saying, either if I win or lose, it's going to be a fantastic opportunity to share a cage with someone like Max Holloway, one of the greatest in the world. Again, he's someone who's maybe looking, 29 years of age. He's looking to cement legacy and his bank balance more so than looking for UFC titles. Of course, everyone in this game, strives that, but ultimately, it is a prize fighting sport. And the best part of this sport has been able to come out the other side financially stable. We see Conor McGregor do that, so lucratively. But there's many champions who, who are struggling financially, unfortunately. And of course, that's a hot topic for debate for the pay of fighters. But it is a prize fighting sport more so. And, only a select few can be champion. Not everyone can go in there and win the title. But if Yair Rodriguez does beat Max Holloway tonight, which, I wouldn't say is an impossibility by any stretch of the imagination. If he pulls out something like he did against the Korean Zombie, he is a dangerous fighter. He's got incredible kicks, he's got incredible striking. He has got good boxing, and this is a very interesting fight to see what happens because you could definitely see Max Holloway piecing him up like he did Calvin Kattar, but then you see Yair Rodriguez pull out something special like a spinning elbow or a wheel kick or something incredible and get the knockout, and you go, oh, now we're looking at a new contender from Alex Volkanovski. If Max Holloway wins tonight, it's be interesting to see what happens. Of course, everyone wants to see that third fight with Volkanovski, albeit he is 2-0 against Volkanovski in losses, that is, of course. But it's interesting to see what he's talking about in terms of, looking at money fights. The Conor McGregor fight, he's saying he's on the shortlist, which he is. He's probably third or fourth on that shortlist. At the moment, I think you've got Tony Ferguson, Michael Chandler, Dustin Poirier is here or there, more so for Conor McGregor than, fans as a whole, maybe. And then you're looking at the Max Holloways and Nate Diaz, of course. So yeah, he is in that top 5 sort of fights you'd want for Conor McGregor, and he is going to be returning in probably March, which is probably the end of the timeline of Max Holloway. And albeit Conor McGregor is a very good fighter, he's becoming that guy who you go, I don't know if he wins this one. You're looking at someone who is beatable, a bit like Nate Diaz. You go in there and you go, he's got a big name, but he's someone to almost build your name on, build your profile on, and get a win. But obviously, we don't know what state McGregor's going to come back in. Maybe, he does take part in this takeover part 2. I don't believe it right now. Obviously, it's very, we're still seeing very early images of McGregor training. But Max Holloway might be licking at his lips and going, Dustin Poirier pieced him up. I'm a better boxer than Dustin Poirier is. If I can, put some mass on and go up to 155, maybe we've got a war in our hands or, an easy payday. Obviously, he's looking at Charles Oliveira. Charles Oliveira wins that fight, of course. He does have a legitimate claim to say he's already beat the champion. Give me a second chance at it and become a 2-weight champion. And of course, you have got Volkanovski there also. And there isn't a legitimate contender right now who can take Max Holloway's spot to fight Alex Volkanovski, other than maybe Henry Cejudo. But I don't think. Well, I'd be interested in seeing that fight, but it wouldn't be one. It's not a contender from the division that's risen up. It'll be a former bantamweight, two-weight champion and an Olympian coming back for a payday. And Alex Volkanovski probably deserves a payday too. I don't know what he got paid for the 2 Max Holloway fights. Of course, the first one I believe was his first pay-per-view, so he would have been getting pay-per-view points. He would have done his last 2, of course, and he's become a bit of a, I want to say a superstar, maybe a cult hero in MMA. With the way he carries himself, he's a good guy. But let's have a look at the table. Of course, we've got 22-6 against 13-2. Of course, Holloway been in this game since 19 years of age now, or at least in the UFC from 19 years of age. He's probably been in this game longer than that. But 22-6 up against 13-2. Yair Rodriguez, his only 2 losses have been to Frankie Edgar and Roberto Herrera back in the Mexican Fighters promotions when he was still young, back in almost 10 years ago now. So in the UFC at least, he's only lost to a former lightweight champion, Frankie Edgar, and that was a doctor stoppage. It wasn't even a legitimate finish, so to speak. So he's the top of this division also. Both of them 5'11", which is interesting. Mainly, a lot of the time Max Holloway's fighting someone who's shorter than him and got a shorter range than him, which is why he can pick up those strikes so well. Why he can hang out an inch or 2 further, because he's got that that excess reach and capability to not stand in the pocket so much, and he's got those those long legs. He's got a longer leg reach than Rodriguez by half an inch, but Yair Rodriguez has got a longer frame at 71 inch is compared to 69 for Max Holloway. So it does, it's almost like they're the same almost fighter in a sense, and it'd be interesting to see how they come out the back of this one. I do think it goes 5 rounds, but it'd be interesting to see if we see, my sort of thought process, if we see Max Holloway go 3-4 rounds up, maybe get not cocky as such, but showing that showmanship inside the octagon, which is why we love him, of course, showing the Blessed Express, and then maybe Yair maybe catches him in the 5th round. But go, I wasn't expecting that. Well, but it could easily be 2-2 going into that 5th round also. But I do think we expect a long night tonight, going 5 rounds. And to look at the rankings also. If Yair wins tonight, he goes on to fight Volkanovski, and that's a very interesting fight. Volkanovski is probably the best 145 pounder in the world at the moment. He put on a beating against Brian Ortega, but it's certainly between Volkanovski and Holloway. And if Yair beats Holloway tonight, he then enters that conversation, doesn't he? He's beaten the Korean Zombie. It's interesting the fact that he wasn't looking behind him towards someone like Giga Chikadze or Arnold Allen, of course. But it's in his right to look up. He's a competitor at the end of the day. But there is some fighters, some dangerous fighters coming up. Giga Chikadze, of course, being one of those, and Arnold Allen being the other. And obviously, Josh Emmett is fighting Danny at 269. Ezen Barboza's coming off a win now. And we've got to see where Brian Ortega and Korean Zombie and Calvin Kattar come back to also. So yeah, this is probably the biggest fight right now in the featherweight division. That doesn't include the title, obviously. So yeah, I do think Max gets a decision win tonight, and it'd be interesting to see how he speaks. But he's clearly got 3 different plans on his mind, and it's up to the UFC to pick one for him, I suppose, and probably see where the timeline is. Because obviously Alex Volkanovski is going to probably want to get stepping back in there on probably that February or March card, along with Aljamain Sterling and Petian. You probably see those two fight on the same card. Of course, in the co-main event, we've got Ben Rothwell versus Marcos Rogijo de Lima, of course, a heavyweight contest in the co-main event. There probably will be a finish in this one, but you could also see this go 3 rounds, especially as those two. It's going to be a hectic first round, probably maybe round and a half. But once those gas tanks starting to empty, and both of them are taking a lot of damage, that back end, that final round is probably going to be a little lackluster, and we see one of these two eke out a decision, maybe probably a 29-28. And I'm going in favour on UFC picks in De Lima. I think De Lima gets it done tonight. Of course, we've got 39 and 13, and a tremendous record there for Ben Rothwell. The amount of fights he's been in, 52 professional bouts, of course, and he's coming up against someone who's only had 26, half the amount of the experience in the cage. Of course, Ben Rothwell's last one was that win against Chris Barnett, who has become a cult hero. Before that, he lost to Marcin Tybura. You got OSP, Stefan Struve wins. He lost to 3 in a row to Arlovsky, Ivanov, and Judio dos Santos. So he's one of those fighters that, he's got some good wins on his record. Like Brandon Vera, Alistair Overeem, Matt Mitrione, Josh Barnett, fantastic wins, as is Stefan Struve and OSP. Some fantastic wins on his record, whereas De Lima is still very much on the come up of this division. He is only, he's 36 years of age. He's very old, but he's still quite young in the sports aspect, Although he's been in this game, since 2009, but he's still quite relatively new in the UFC compared to Ben Rothwell, that is. He's got wins against Ben Soli, Maurice Green. He did lose to Alexander Romanov and Stefan Struve. He lost to OSP as well. So you're probably looking at this, we're putting those 2 records on paper and going right. Ben Rothwell's beaten the guys that Marcos has lost to, of course. But I do think De Lima gets it done tonight. He had a good finish against Spencer Soli. I'm thinking of that quite violent knockout. But yeah, he's very much win lose, and the trajectory tonight does say he loses. But I'm going alongside him to snap that pattern up and get a second win in a row. Also, someone looking to get back in the win column is, of course, Felicia Spencer. She's coming off the back of 3 losses in a row now. 2 losses in a row and 1 grappling loss in Submission Underground. But obviously she lost to Norma Dumont via split decision, and of course to the champion Amanda Nunes last year. And prior to that, she beat Sarah Thien and lost to Chris Cyborg. So she's lost to 2 of the greatest of all time in MMA. And of course, Norma Dumont, it's interesting to see where she goes next. It's probably going to be against Amanda Nunes after she beat Aspen Ladder course. That's probably Nunes' next target at 145. Or Kayla Harrison, maybe, if she wants to enter the octagon. But it looks like she might be entering the Bellator cage with a back and forth against Chris Cyborg. But we're talking about that in Punch and Brunch, of course. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. We will be covering Bellator 271 on that, of course. But Leah Letson, of course, coming through the Ultimate Fighter herself. She is, she lost the final to Macy Chiasson, but then she came in and beat Julia Stoliarenko by a split decision back in 2018. So it's her first fight in 3 years. She's had quite a tough time, I think, with injuries building into this one. But, it's been a while since she's been into the octagon. And I do back Felicia Spencer here. She's had the better of the opponents, albeit she's not, maybe won those fights. But to go 5 rounds with Nunes, albeit it was a 50-45, I think, or even maybe a 50-44 to Nunes, she still had 5 rounds in the cage with Nunes, as she had 3 rounds in with Chris Cyborg. So she's had better experiences. She beat the likes of Megan Anderson, Pam Sorensen, and she is, of course, the former Invicta featherweight champion. But it makes this division is tough to predict, and to predict the future and sort of build on and build narratives, because we don't know. There is no rankings in this division. There's not enough females in this division to build a rankings right now. And we know Felicia Spencer's, if not number 1, number 2 in this division. And a judge, she was a judge away from beating Norma Dumont and clarifying that, which probably would have set up a rematch, or probably most likely the closure of the division. Obviously, got those floating at 135 like Holly Holm, Aspen Ladd, Jermaine Durandame can come up to 145. But it's a tough position to be in. You're almost thinking there, maybe the UFC do a little deal with Bellator or something and give them the 145-pound division, and maybe bring someone or a few people over, maybe like an MVP, Pitbull, AJ McKee. We do a little roster change maybe, or maybe WWE style, when they go from Raw to SmackDown. We have a couple go over to Bellator and a couple to come over to UFC. I think that might be a wise business decision, but of course Dana White, Scott Coker don't usually do business together. My favourite fight of the night, well actually probably second favourite fight of the night, of course, is Miguel Baeza versus KS Williams. Both 2 fighters that love to come forward and bring us a performance of the night bonus, or fight of the night bonus. These two are rarely in a boring fight. Of course, Caramel Thunder lost to Ponzinibbio in June, of course, by unanimous decision. But before that, he beat the likes of Matt Brown, Takashi Sato, Hector Aldana. He's putting a good run to himself, but he's going to come back with his first professional defeat tonight. How's he gonna come back from defeat? Is he gonna put it 2 losses in a row, or is it just he was up against a very good Santiago Ponzinibbio, of course. But KS Williams is a wily guy, isn't he? If you remember, he was staring down Abdul Razak Al Hassan, of course. He just stared him down and then knocked him out with 1 punch inside 30 seconds. So he has that capability. He's beaten the likes of Alex Morono. He went a decision with Mikael Pereira, but that was a close fight, of course. And I think Mikael Pereira took lightly the 3rd round. Also, I think both of them were shattered. 2 very much fighters who seem to flourish being inside the octagon and show their best side and their personality in the cage also. And then he came back and beat Matt Samuelsberger by unanimous decision. So I do think this will be fight of the night. I do think this does probably go 3 rounds, but I think this could go either way. But I'd go with KS Williams on my UFC picks. So yeah, let us know down in the comments who you'd like to see get the victory. Will it be Caramel Thunder, or will it be the Ops fighter KS Williams? But yeah, I'm excited for this one. This card isn't the best on paper. It's unfortunate, we're following off the back of 2 pay-per-views back to back that very much delivered. But you'd almost want to cherry pick maybe Alex Pereira's debut, or Frankie Edgar and Marlon Vera, and put them on this card. But of course, at the moment, with the lack of fans and the ability for the UFC to travel to different arenas at the moment, they kept the fight nights pretty plain in comparison to the pay-per-views, which for the fighters tonight, it gives them an increased chance of exposure, and of course, earning a bonus here and there, and re-putting their name out there, like the likes of Jacqueline Buckley did last year. You can see KS Williams and Baeza putting out a highlight reel knockout that we'll see for the next week. And of course, we've got Song Yudong versus Julio Archer. Of course, this is opening up the card. Again, a fantastic fight. We know how much fun Song Yudong is, and Julio Archer is a fun fighter. 17-5-1 against 17-4. Both of these have similar experience. Obviously, Song Yudong is still only 23 years of age. He's done so much in such a short time, whereas Julio Archer is 32 years of age. He's coming to this after a back of a finish against Andre Ewell, but he's 2-2 in his last 4, losing to Shaman Moraes via split decision, and Hakim Dawodu, but sandwiching between that as a win against Julian LaRosa. He's got wins over Danny Ige, Daniel Tima. He's got some fantastic wins on his record, of course, and obviously Song Yudong, an exciting fighter. This is at 135 pounds. Let's not forget. He beat Casey Kenny via split decision in his last fight. That was a fun fight. He's got a win over Marlon Vera, who just KO'd Frankie Edgar and probably retired Frankie Edgar maybe. He got a draw against Cody Starman. He beat Alejandro Perez. Of course, he lost that unanimous decision to Kyler Phillips. But this is going to be a fantastic fight, and maybe I think one of these two get performance of the night, and I think the fight following that, Miguel Baeza versus Caleb Williams, gets fight of the night, but it could easily be switched around. We've got Thiago Moises versus Joel Alvarez in open as the feature in the prelim. We've got Cynthia Calvillo versus Andrea Lee. Of course, Andrea Lee was scheduled to fight Jessica Rai, but Jessica Rai was ill and had to withdraw from the fight, and Calvillo slept in it on short notice. So it's a good opportunity for Andrea Lee to get back. Back up the flyweight ranking. She's up against number 7. She is number 12 at the moment. 12-5, obviously. She beat Anthony Shevchenko to snap that 3-fight skid against Joanne Quidwood, Lauren Murphy, and Roxanne Modafferi. So hopefully she's going to be looking to get back into a winning streak rather than a losing streak. But Cynthia Calvillo, she looked good when, didn't she? She came up from strawweight, came up to flyweight, and of course she beat Jessica Rai by unanimous decision. But she's also in back-to-back losses to Katlyn Chookagian and Jessica Andrade. I had called Andrea Lee to win this one tonight. I think Andrea Lee is probably the bigger fighter of the two, and I think she's probably found her mojo back. But it'd be interesting to see just how she comes out, because she could very much, go back to the form. Of course, the Lauren Murphy and Joanne Quidwood were split decision losses, so it's fine margins in this game. But the Roxanne Modafferi one was a poor loss for her. But I'm hoping she gets back into, continues that winning streak that she can build and start climbing those rankings again. Of course, you got Sean Woods versus Colin Anglin. You got Courtney Casey versus Liana Jojoa. The Georgian takeover is still here. Obviously, Jojoa had a horrific broken nose in her last fight, I believe, where she lost to Miranda Maverick, doctor stoppage after round 1. Of course, but she beat Diana Belbita and lost to Sarah Morris. She's 2-2 in her last 4. 1-2 in her UFC career, unfortunately, but I think she gets back to 2-2 tonight against Courtney Casey. Of course, Courtney Casey, a veteran in the sport, 9-9. So she's on a 2-fight loss streak herself. She's 1-3 in the last 4. That armbar win against Mara Barella, of course, but she's lost to Gillian Robertson, Cynthia Calvillo. She beat Angela Hill back in her 115-pound days, but since she's come up to 125, it's been 1-2 also. But yeah, she's up against Jojoa tonight in a fantastic fight. But I do think Jojoa gets it done and gets back onto winning ways. Representing the UK, we've got Mark Diakese against Rafael Alves. Fantastic fight also. It's a shame it's so far down the card. Second fight of the night, 14-4. His last fight was a loss to Rafael Visaya, which of course is not a poor loss to have on your record. Prior to that, he beat Joe Duffy and Lando Venata. But again, there's a part of him that hasn't been too active. He thought once in 2020. He had 2 fights in 2019, so he needs to get back to an active resume. But he is 28 years of age, coming to his prime, and he was highly touted as the next sort of prospect at lightweight, and he needs to get back to that also. With a win tonight against Rafael Alves, 19-10. He lost to Ismagulov back in May, but prior to that, he'd put on a 5-fight win streak even. But again, I have to represent the UK here and put on a Mark Diakese win on the predictions for tonight's card. And obviously got Kennedy Nchukwu opening the card against Darren Jung. Obviously, Kennedy Nchukwu opening the card, he's someone who's got a lot of power himself. He's got some good knockouts on the record, but he's had a tough time of recent, hasn't he? Actually, no, he's on a 3-fight win streak. I was thinking that triangle choke to Paul Craig. I thought he'd lost more than that. But, he's opened up the card, beat Carlos Ulberg at UFC 239. He beat Danilo Marquez back in June. So he's had a busy 2021, and he's going to look out to close the year with a 3rd win this year and a 4th in succession. He's certainly made up for not fighting in 2020. But yes, he's come up against Jung, who of course beat William Knight on UFC on ABC2 back in April. He drew to Sam Alvey, beat Mike Rodriguez, beat Ibrahimov. So he's had a good run in the UFC. 3-0-1. He's undefeated in the UFC, but I do think Kenny Nchukwu does get it done, and probably a vicious knockout also. But that could be a very nice way to open up the prelims, which does get started right now. So we are going to leave it there, guys. Make sure to put your predictions down in the comments down below. You're going with Max Holloway or Yair Rodriguez. What's your sort of plans for the landscape of the featherweight division? Probably for Max Holloway. Would you rather see him fight Charles Oliveira if that wins? Maybe a rematch with Dustin Poirier, albeit he's 0-2 with Dustin Poirier. Does he enter the lightweight rankings? Maybe a Dan Hooker or Rafael Dos Anjos, somewhere like that, or Tony Ferguson? Or does he go for the money fight with Conor McGregor and maybe look to equal the scores with the notorious one when he returns in 2022. But yes, I'm going to leave it there, guys. Enjoy the fights, and we will see you on the next episode of Punch and Brunch.